So what is God? Well, that's what you walk with when you're unself-conscious. So that's an interesting idea. And then you have the God that manifests himself, let's say, in the story of Noah, and that's the intuition.
A form of perceptive insight that is even higher than inspiration.
In the story of Noah, that's the intuition that hard times are coming and that you better get your house in order. And you think, well, does that lead you, that intuition? Well, certainly sometimes, if you have any sense.
Human intuition is a great talent that it is a sin to lose, and which seems to us to be a precious gift made to ourselves at the time when we, having lost it, began to recover it again by our own efforts.
Hard times are coming and that you better get your house in order. It's like, well, what's the nature of the intuition? Is that a spirit that animates you? Well, obviously, because there you are acting, and so you're acting out a pattern. Certainly sometimes, if you have any sense, it's a spirit that animates you.
This is called intuition in anthroposophy. In inspiration, a world of spiritual entities reveals itself. In intuition, the relationship of the perceptive human being to this world becomes a closer one. Something purely spiritual is brought to full conscious awareness. We thus enter into a life where we are human spirit, among other spiritual entities.
It's a spirit that animates you. And then there's the story of...
For several hours I spoke with something that claimed to be an angel. It explained things I had not known and provided another vision. It showed me a solar eclipse in the sky. It looked like a hole, and out of that hole there poured water. This water was pitch black, but shining at its edges like the eclipse itself. There was chaos in the world below, and the water engulfed everything. It flooded cities and towns and drowned the world. But in the midst of it there were people who the waters parted around, and who were not touched by it. They brought people with them to high ground, and fought off others who they left behind.
Genesis 9:11 claim that all flesh will not be destroyed in a flood he makes again to punish us. Well, what I'm talking about is not the entire world. I expect over 50% survival of most species. Millions of humans will be remaining. This is caused by the galactic current sheet and solar micronova's unlocking of the low-velocity zone plasticized magma glue layer, not your adultery and lack of prayer.
What's interesting is that God finally lays down his judgment. And there's an interesting little tidbit in the way that God judges that is very fascinating and can help us understand what exactly the judgment of God is. And we often think of the judgment of God as this arbitrary thing that comes down from heaven, throwing lightning bolts. Just God is angry, so he sends down his anger. And there's a way in which we need to understand that that's real, that the anger of God is a real thing, that if the world goes against what it's supposed to be, if it starts to move in directions that are counter its nature, then the anger of God comes down upon us. But that anger of God is the very result of us going away from what God wants. It's in the very pattern of moving away. So the distortion of reality, the modification of reality towards our perversions and our desires is what is going to destroy us itself. And so interestingly enough, God turns to Gabriel and says, go to the biters, the reprobates, to the children of fornication, and destroy the children of fornication, right? The offspring of the watchers, these giants, go destroy them from among men. Bring them forth and do what? And excite them one against another. Let them perish by mutual slaughter, for the length of days shall not be theirs. So you can understand that the truth of these perverted patterns at some point starts to manifest itself. And how does it start to manifest itself? They start to manifest themselves as their incapacity to exist. So the truth of these patterns is that people will fight amongst each other. And so God is saying, Gabriel, excite in them this capacity to fight against another. But that's in their very pattern of what they're doing as well. In that pattern of desire, in that pattern of trying to be more powerful, to be more vain, to be more attractive, to attract more attention, all of that will lead us against each other. And so that is where the truth of those horrible patterns start to manifest themselves, and it means that people start to fight and they self-destroy ultimately. And so you could think of it, like as someone who starts to take heroin. They take heroin, and then at some point you could say, the judgment of God is on that person. But it's actually also just the consequences of them taking heroin. That is, the truth of that pattern of taking heroin is that it's not sustainable. If you do it constantly, then at some point it starts to break apart, and you start to self-destroy, and that appears as the judgment of God. All right?
In my version, the only land that matters in this context, by the way, stays dry and takes the fire instead.
Way back in the days of Noah, water covered all the land. Then the great rainbow of promise started us on life again. And the good book tells of fire that will fill the earth someday. And the sinful will be screaming as the earth shall pass away. When the fire...
The poet, the true poet, like a prophet, is someone who has intimations of the future.
If we do not close our eyes to the spectacle of nature and trouble ourselves to delve into it in order to discover its secrets.
And maybe that's because the poetic mind, the philosophical or prophetic mind, is a pattern detector, and there are people who can detect the underlying, it's like the melody of a nation. Melody as in song, the song of a nation, and can see how it's going to develop across the centuries.
But nature also has a living language, which was better comprehended by the ancients during periods of the primitive simplicity of life than is now understood by us. But nevertheless, we are also striving energetically for the natural divination, realizing the frankness of nature's speech addressed to those who know how to hear them.
Most of the philosophers look down on a lot of the magical practices, but they treat divination with respect. Notice the word divine in there, by the way, right? To divine something. Because if you pay attention very carefully, what they're talking about is a kind of imaginal intuition. It's, and I mean this now in a way that I think is completely understandable in cognitive scientific terms, right? So the divination was people were just noticing that certain people were just really good in situations in which you couldn't propose a method.
You see that in Nietzsche, because Nietzsche, for example, in the around 1860 or so, he prophesied what was going to happen in the 20th century. He said specifically that the specter of communism would kill millions of people in the 20th century. It's an amazing prophecy. He said that in the notes that became Will to Power. And Dostoevsky was of the same sort of mind, someone who was in touch enough with the fundamental patterns of human movement that they could extrapolate out into the future and see what was coming. And some people are very good at detecting patterns, and Milton, I think, was of that sort. And I think he had intimations of what was coming as human rationality became more and more powerful and technology became more and more powerful. And the intimation was that we would produce systems that dispensed with God. So what is God?
Intuition.
The intuition that hard times are coming and that you better get your house in order.